Hello everyone, my name is Marcus from DM Photography, and in today's video I'm going to take you all the way back to the beginnings of my photography and talk through all the phases that I went through as a photographer that led me to my photographic style of today. Let's take a look. Before we get started, I want to tell you what this video is about or not about so that you can judge if you want to stick around for the rest of this video or just leave right away. So this video is not about gear. It is not about me telling you what gear to use or explain to you why I used which gear so that you need to copy that or something. So there is no direct recommendation from my side, nor is this about me telling you that you have to go through all these phases that I went through yourself to reach a specific level. It is just merely me sharing my experience of the last 18 years of photography with you so that maybe you can recognize yourself either in one of those phases, and if you do so, that you know what might come along your way. And also maybe talk a little bit about why my style evolved the way it evolved to the point that, or where I am right now, and that you, in case you already know this channel, that you have seen in my past videos. But enough of this, let's get started with phase number one, which I would call the beginning. This is the time when I was shooting with the Canon PowerShot G2, a very advanced point-and-shoot camera, and I was mainly taking photos on vacations. And this is also maybe the first point where you might recognize yourself, because many people start like that. Photography is a hobby, and they mainly shoot when they are on vacation. So I was no other than that. And then from time to time I also documented a little bit the life around me, but that was it. And let's now get into a couple of photos and then we'll talk about them. So yeah, there we go. These were a couple of shots that I took between 2002 and 2005 with the Canon PowerShot G2. We've seen a couple of landscape photos. I didn't really pay attention to composition. I was really just documenting what I saw. That was it. It didn't even cross my mind that I have to compose something in particular. And then for me, other than landscape photos, without any people in them, what is also very typical, or was very typical for me in that phase, was these shots like the one from the beach where you just see a beach, no context and nothing, again just the memory. Then a shot that I took from the car window while the car was driving, also something that you might do. And then the typical macro shot or shots of flowers. You discover for the very first time that you can get very close with your camera to a subject and see details that you don't usually realize. Same with the spider. So this is for me what would describe phase one, the beginning. Now in this phase between 2002 and 2005, yes, 3 years, this is what I was doing, but at some point I realized that there's something more. There is more interest from my side into photography and that I want to learn more. And I need another camera. That was my firm belief at the time. And I wanted to shoot manual. Now this is something that is, I would say today, heavily disputed, and I don't know, I don't have a really hard opinion on that, but in my personal case, that was my ambition. I wanted to learn what aperture is, what the shutter speed is, what ISO is, and how to play with these three values. And so what I did, I bought a Nikon D70S, started a phase two, which was the technical phase, and had the ambition to really learn this camera. I had one lens in the beginning, And basically the kit lens, I think an 18 to 55, not sure, and then later bought a 70 to 300 and was shooting this. What you saw now was me, a beginner photographer with a brand new camera, the Nikon D70S, taking a new style and approach to landscape photography, a very technical one. Again, I was still not at the point where I was paying attention to composition. I didn't read any books or anything about how to compose correctly. I was just going by my intuition, taking the photos of those landscapes or the street photos that you saw. I wouldn't even call it street photography at that time. I think in my mind, even in this phase 2, when I wanted to get my camera under control, was about me capturing moments, but having this ambition of using my newly acquired DSLR that I was very proud of and having it in manual mode and learning photography and yeah, the tool basically. And after I shot like that for probably like half a year to a year, somehow it started to make click in my head. And then we enter a phase that I would call, I now started to see. And when I entered this phase where I would now say I started to see, these were the results. So here you saw me in the period between 2005 and 2007, for the very first time in my life paying attention to composition, not being afraid of cutting something, me trying for the very first time to give context to something, and me for the very first time maybe, but very subconsciously, taking pictures about something. This is one of the strong philosophies that I try to follow, and that is taking pictures about something and not taking pictures of something. Of course, I'm not religiously following this principle, but if opportunity comes, I would always try to compose to tell a story with the photo that I'm taking. But so this was a very satisfying time for me, you know, looking at my own photos when I imported the photos into my PC at the time. And I also started to use photo editing. So I for the very first time used software to correct contrasts or colors and so on and so forth. And also, by the way, all the photos that you will see here were not re-edited for this video. They are just purely how I shot in the past and how I edited. And this is also maybe something that we'll discuss a little bit later, because that is also a big part of photography, and it always was, the editing part in the past in the darkroom, and now with software on your computers. But in addition to me being in this phase 3 and starting to see, I also started to see more abstract things in the world. And I didn't yet have a photographic direction or, again, any big ambition with photography. So I was playing around also with abstract concepts. So in the same time period of the photos that you just saw, I also shot these things. One of the ambitions that I had when I was shooting these abstract photos was the idea of creating a photo book. And I was pursuing this idea of shooting interesting things that are not so common and are just documenting my life, to create these photo books. And I have the 2 photo books here that I printed back in that time, and I think they are from 2006. They were printed by Kodak. And here I have these photos that you've seen. For example, here this abstract photo of what I call elephantaceous, where I basically saw an elephant in there. Or you've also seen here the mirror, for example, or this photo here. And I created this album. And I created this second photo book here also with just basically impressions and having these photos that I was shooting. And it was my first approach to having my photos printed and really to see how photos are when you see them physically in front of you. And yeah, so this was very valuable to me at the time. And I'm still in this pursuit of creating photo books. And talking about creating photo books, I just received today my newest photo book, which is just called Zurich. And I will probably show you a little bit more about this photo book in an upcoming episode. But yeah, so I think I did in the meantime, I hope, a step forward. But this we'll talk about in a different episode. So after having had this phase of, like I called, starting to see and then abstract, what followed then was what I call the downfall. And the downfall is something that maybe many of you fell into. I definitely did, and that was discovering the power of the photo editing software. And for me that was a very dangerous phase, because what came out afterwards is this here. It really hurts seeing these pictures for me if I look at them today. At that time I was very proud of them. So what did we see now? We saw HDR and overdoing HDR. I think there's nothing wrong with HDR. I personally don't shoot it anymore, but I can see the value in HDR. But what I did is I exaggerated it. I basically used the software to its, let's say, fullest potential, and that was the result. And then the next thing was filters like Hipstamatic, for example, or putting like certain light effects into the photo, or yeah, making something look like an old postcard. So lucky me, I think that phase didn't last for too long, and then I entered the next phase. And this was another gear change. So I changed from the Nikon D70S to a Nikon D700, which I later replaced by a D750 and I currently still own, and the Fuji X100S. And I went out of this phase of HDR and effects back to more, let's say, normal editing, and sadly also back to more vacation type of photography. But this was what I call now the phase 4, the phase 4 of having mastered everything technically, from at least the gear that I was owning, and shooting normal pictures. So let's take a look at my phase 4. So here we saw a couple of different things. We saw a couple of landscape photos, we saw a couple of street photos, and we saw some safari photos. Of course, there was this phase when I wanted to use big telelenses and get close to things that are very far away. And so, so you now see maybe a little bit of a wider portfolio, but I was shooting basically everything that I felt like. I didn't have a real motto, or still no real motto. I still wouldn't have called myself street photographer or anything, but I think I was starting to apply my knowledge about composition, of getting close, of not over editing my photos, and it was an important phase. At the end of that phase, and that was 2016, what I realized was that I had too much gear. And with too much gear, I don't mean too many cameras. I just had the Nikon D750 and the Fuji X100S, that's it. But I had plenty of lenses for the Nikon. I had filters, I had all kinds of things, and it was distracting me. I also just had one prime lens, and zooming in and out, back and forth. I think I was all over the place. and I was looking for something new. I already had, probably since 2012 or something around that time, the Leica M system in mind, but I never really considered it, especially because they are so expensive. But then came 2016, and with 2016 the Leica MD was announced and came out, and I bought it in April of 2016. And with the Leica MD, a digital Leica without a back screen, and there are plenty of videos in my channel where I talk about that camera, I entered, for me, this new phase of photography. And let me now show you first a couple of photos that I took with my Leica MD. For me, the biggest learnings with the Leica MD, or basically, if I want to generalize it, the Leica M system, what it provided to me was the simplicity, the prime lenses, and giving me the control that I wanted and the simplicity that I personally wanted. Now, again, like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, this is not me saying you need a Leica M system to progress once you reach what I just called phase 4. It was a personal choice of mine, and something that for me personally needed for my further development. But what we see here, and what the Leica MD taught me in the end, was to understand when something is a black and white shot and when something is a color shot. So with the Leica MD, it was not anymore about do I get aperture, shutter speed, and ISO correct, what is a composition. It was really about seeing things, and seeing things either in color or seeing things in black and white. So it taught me to think of that before taking the shot. So before this phase, I was retrospectively making black and white photos out of some of the color photos. But with the Leica MD, and by the way, in the beginning of the Leica MD, I also still did that. But now in the later phases, before I even take the shot on the Leica MD, I already know if it will be a black and white photo or a color photo. And having started to master that, I entered phase number 6, and it is the final phase from my current development and the phase that I'm currently in, and that is the phase of me shooting analog next to digital. And I bought in 2018 the Leica M6 that I have here, and with that entered basically an MD type of shooting, but on film. And with film, as you know it, you anyway choose a color film or a black and white film, and you can't choose in the middle, or at least with a Leica M system you can't just switch in the middle just like that. So let me now show you a couple of shots that I took with the Leica M6 in color and black and white. So in this phase 6, where I was shooting a mix of digital and analog, and the photos that you just saw were all analog, I started to collapse everything I learned in these 18 years into my, let's say, current style of mostly street and people photography. So you saw abstract photos and like these hashtag accidentally Wes Anderson type of photos. You see me taking an approach of a very classical street photo. It is me playing with colors in the sense of having colors in the photo, but having strong geometries and reducing the colors, not having too many distracting colors in a shot. And this is what I would call my current style. So I don't know where this journey will bring me going forward. I know that the Leica M system is the system that I currently feel like it's the perfect fit for me. Or in these 18 years, it somehow brought me to the Leica M system. I don't know where the future will go, but for now, in the time being, and also for this channel, I will be mostly a Leica M shooter. And with that, I mean MD and M6 mostly. But I also at the same time, and the ones who already follow this channel, you might have seen that I bought a Mamiya RZ67 in the beginning of the year, which was my first medium format camera, also an analog camera, and I'll leave a link to a video up here. But yeah, so with that I enter another phase in parallel to my Leica M shooting. So with this, I would like to conclude the 6 phases I went through, which brought me from hobby, vacation / documentary photographer to the photographer that I am today and the style that I have today. And again, by no means I want to say that these are the phases you have to go through, or this is the gear that you have to use in order to shoot this type of photos, in case you like this type of photos that I just showed you. In fact, you can probably shoot all the photos that I showed you with my Leica M6 also on an iPhone. To be fair, this is nothing that is somehow restricted to Leica M system, just in case you're preparing already your comments. It is just that for me, the Leica M system is the tool that made me see the things that I photographed, and I am not sure if I personally would have taken those shots with a Nikon system and a zoom lens or an iPhone. That's the only question that I think everybody has to answer for themselves. Well, before I leave you for today, I would be really interested to know in the comment section below in which phase you think you are, if you also think you follow kind of like this path, if you also think that you are way further than me and you want to give me a sneak peek into phases that I might enter in the future. I really want to learn about them. I'm very curious about what might come along my way. So yeah, please leave a couple of comments below. I'm really happy to discuss, and I'm always eager to engage in conversations. Also, if you like this type of content, subscribe to the channel for more. Again, I will cover a lot of Leica M stuff. I will cover a lot of Mamiya RZ67 stuff going forward, and I will talk about photography in general, and I will also show you my new photo book in case you're interested. So yeah, subscribe to stay tuned. Other than that, all that is left is to say thanks again for watching this video. Appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.